Lonely on her birthday, a millionaire revealed an incredible surprise that transformed everything. Sarah Jenkins stared at the shimmering skyline from her lavish Texas mansion, the clock ticking towards noon and a gnawing void threatening to consume her. At 38, she had built an empire. Her self-made fortune was the envy of many. Yet today, as the world celebrated her birthday, the silence of her grand halls echoed sharper than any applause. A sumptuous breakfast lay untouched, while the warmth of her philanthropic heart felt cold and distant. What good was financial success if it stood as a barrier to genuine connection, folding her into layers of isolation instead of uplifting her spirit? Determined to fill this emptiness, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. The allure of philanthropy had flared brightly, but for what reason? Was it to genuinely effect change, or to cloak her insecurities in noble intentions? Each year she organized events to support underprivileged youth. But with every endeavor, the critical voices had grown louder, suspicious of her true motivations. How could a millionaire know the struggles of the less fortunate? They asked. She had begun to question her own drive. Was this charity, or was it self-indulgence? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With an agile resolve, Sarah rushed into the community center later that afternoon. As the doors swung open, the infectious laughter of children danced in the air, vibrant and alive. Here, amidst crammed tables and crayon-scribbled dreams, her heart began to swell. They spoke of doctorate aspirations, inventions that would change the world, and yet the shadows of their reality loomed heavy. Barriers crouched like monsters poised to devour their future, and suddenly the walls of her mansion felt like prison bars, cold and cruel compared to the warmth of these hopes. But just as inspiration coursed through her veins, it was interrupted by a chilling thought. Mark Harris, her rival in philanthropy, would soon be casting doubt on her motives. His disdainful tone echoed in her mind. Is it truly charity if it's being used to elevate your image? Self-doubt wrapped around her like a serpent, squeezing tighter as the whispers of the townspeople crept into her consciousness, threatening her reputation. Each accusation cut deeper than any blade, and the pressure intensified, forcing her to confront her darkest fears. What if she had indeed become the villain in her own story? Just then, she spotted a child, eyes brimming with unfiltered admiration, holding up a drawing labeled A, Future Full of Hope. The realization loomed large, yet the tug of fear raged within, her breath coming in quick bursts as she realized that the confrontation at the town hall meeting would be a stage set for her reckoning. In front of community scrutiny, could she not only defend her character, but reveal the deeper connection to her father's legacy? Her heart clenched with a mix of urgency and despair. How could she turn this moment into transformation? Or would the shadows of doubt seal her fate? The tension thickened, and her thoughts raced ahead. This was just the beginning of a battle she had never anticipated, one that could redefine everything she thought she knew about success and compassion. The air was thick with anticipation as Sarah stood in front of the town hall that fateful night. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering unsteadily like her diminishing confidence. She could hear the murmur of the crowd, each low voice a reminder of the scrutiny that awaited her. This was not merely about her philanthropic efforts. It had escalated into a trial of her very character. As she took the stage, Sarah's throat went dry. The seats were packed, and familiar faces turned toward her, some supportive, others waiting to pounce. Mark Harris stood off to the side, his smirk a silent taunt. "Let's see what you've got, millionaire," his expression seemed to say, daring her to falter in the spotlight. She cleared her throat, her heart racing. "Thank you all for coming tonight." The words felt foreign on her tongue, laden with the weight of expectations. "Many of you may wonder why I am here, why I pour so much into charity." The thoughts spilled out, each one more vulnerable than the last. "I do it because I believe in the potential of our youth, not because I need to prove anything to anyone." Some nods of acknowledgement surfaced, but skepticism remained etched on the faces of several audience members. A hand shot up, a local journalist eager to challenge her sincerity. "But Sarah, how can we trust your intentions when your wealth is so far removed from the struggles of the people you claim to help?" The question tore through her. In that moment, the shadows lurking at the edges of her psyche re-emerged, crawling up her spine. Why did she feel compelled to defend herself against a question that echoed her own doubts? The silence thickened, pressing in on her. "Because I was once a child just like many of you," she replied, steeling herself. "I grew up surrounded by wealth, and I was always grateful for it. But my father showed me the other side of life. Over the years, he embodied the very spirit I strive to honor today, the spirit of giving without the need for recognition." Sarah's voice grew steadier. "Charity is not an easy path. It demands self-reflection, and it insists we confront our motivations. And trust me, I have. Plenty to reflect on." The tension shifted slightly in the room. A flicker of empathy glimmered in some eyes, but Mark was not finished. He stepped forward, the embodiment of challenge, his voice smooth yet condescending. "And what about your wealth? Isn't it just an extension of your father's legacy? What happens when the spotlight fades and you're left with yourself? Will you still be relevant?" Anger flared inside her, but it ignited a different fire, one of determination. What he didn't realize was that she was no longer willing to hide behind her family's name. This was about carving her own identity, reclaiming the essence of who she was meant to be. The pressure of the confrontation focused her thoughts. This was not merely an attack, it was a challenge to ultimately discover her true self. The crowd's murmur resumed, uncertainty swirling within. Could she simply share her father's legacy while forging her own path? A deeper resolve took root. The time had come to face not just Mark, but her own fears. She would reveal her commitment to making a solid impact on the community, beyond monetary donations. "I understand I have a battle ahead of me," she declared, a newfound tremor of resolve in her voice. "But if I measure success by the hearts I touch, then I will not stop fighting. Not for myself or my image, but for those dreams, those children who deserve a fighting chance." As the audience absorbed her words, the inside of her chest tightened with both dread and hope. Could this declaration redefine her place? Would they see her not as a mere millionaire, but as a catalyst for genuine change? She stepped back, feeling the weight of hundreds of gazes. In that moment, the stakes became clearer. If she faltered now, it could signal the collapse of everything she had built and sought to build. What would it take to secure that hope for the future she now clung to? The journey of self-discovery demanded more than mere words. It called for actions that echoed her fierce commitment. As the night deepened, tensions coiled tighter. But in the heart of chaos lay an undeniable truth. The meeting had catalyzed something deep within, but a larger confrontation loomed on her horizon, a decision that could forever alter the course of her story. What would she do when the illusions of her past collided with the reality of her present? In the days following the town hall meeting, Sarah found herself lost in contemplation. Each time she replayed her speech, she felt a new layer of understanding emerge. The echoes of Mark's questions haunted her, but she realized they were also catalysts, urging her to confront the discomfort she'd long avoided. Did her wealth indeed distance her from the very community she sought to help? The thought gnawed her, and she knew she had to explore this further. Determined to redefine her narrative, Sarah decided to immerse herself directly in the lives of those she wanted. Instead of hosting lavish dinners or charity balls, she initiated a series of town hall listening sessions. This was her chance to engage deeply, not just to talk, but to genuinely hear the needs, dreams, and frustrations of those she aimed to empower. Stepping into the community center, she was struck by the overwhelming energy in the room. Rows of chairs formed a semicircle around her, filled with faces she recognized from her previous life. But two dimensions defined them now: hope etched into the youth and weariness marked on the older generations. This was not an audience to impress. This was a real conversation about real lives. "Today," she began, her voice steady but vulnerable, "I'm not here to tell you what I think you need. I'm here to listen." With each story shared, she felt her own perspective broaden. People spoke about job loss, lack of opportunity, and a sense of being forgotten. For every inspiring tale of resilience, another heart-wrenching account emerged, reminding her that while her upbringing was comfortable, many hadn't been afforded the same luxuries. One young woman, Maria, expressed her desire to attend college but felt trapped by financial limitations. Sarah's heart ached listening to her plea. No longer could she conduct business from her ivory tower. There was a need for solidarity, not just charity. It struck her, this was exactly where she could channel her efforts. Fostering education and creating pathways for success were far more impactful than mere monetary donations. As Sarah continued these listening sessions over the following weeks, she began to observe her own transformation. The walls she'd built around her identity were being dismantled piece by piece. She became engrossed in the minutiae of community life, volunteering at food pantries, mentoring youth, and even combing through grant applications for educational programs. Each interaction enriched her worldview and revealed talents she had long discounted: her ability to connect, to strategize, and to ignite passion within others. However, Sarah knew the road ahead was fraught with challenges. One evening, as she reviewed Maria's scholarship proposal, her phone buzzed, an email notification from Mark. He challenged her to a debate, capitalizing on her recent visibility. "This isn't over," he wrote, insinuating that her efforts were still nothing more than a superficial attempt to cleanse her image. Her stomach churned at the prospect. Was this a diversion, or perhaps a necessary engagement? She paused, weighing the choices ahead of her. She could continue her work quietly, trying to effect change slowly and deliberately, or confront Mark head-on and defend her newfound path. Immediately she felt the pull of her stubbornness rising. Perhaps it was time to address him, not just for herself, but for those who had been voiceless. With determination igniting within her, Sarah stood up and stared out the window, feeling the setting sun illuminate both her fears and her resolve. The moment was ripe for reckoning. What awaited her in that confrontation with Mark could either solidify her newfound purpose or force her to retreat back into doubt. The world beyond her window, filled with challenges yet to be met, beckoned to her. Would she stand her ground and transform her trials into stepping stones towards something greater? The question lingered heavy in the air, intertwining with her growing understanding that her journey had only just begun. A storm of thoughts swirled in Sarah's mind, each grappling for attention, as she prepared to respond to Mark's challenge. The impending debate felt like a tightrope walk between her vulnerable journey and the public's perception. She could almost feel the scrutinizing eyes of the community upon her, anticipating a performance rather than a heartfelt expression of transformation. Yet, the more she thought about the opportunity, the more she recognized the potential consequences. The following day, she strategically scheduled a meeting in her office, a space that still felt too pristine to hold the weight of her current journey. She refined her arguments, determined to convey not just the motivations behind her work, but the reality of her evolution. With each point she crafted, however, Mark's voice echoed in her memory, casting a shadow over her newfound confidence. Was she merely playing into a narrative that could reinforce his skepticism? As she positioned herself for the fight, Sarah could feel the invisible layers of her identity lining up: the wealthy philanthropist, the confused neophyte, the passionate advocate. Sifting through this complex landscape forced her to confront something deeper: fear of failure. Would articulating her growth make her a target for those like Mark who preferred to dwell in cynicism? On the day of the debate, the auditorium buzzed as attendees filtered in, and apprehension trickled through her veins. Seated at the front, with a podium before her and an audience eager to gauge her authenticity, Sarah felt like a gladiator ready to face an adversary skilled in verbal combat. Mark's voice cut through the ambient noise as he opened with a question aimed at her intent. "Sarah, do you really believe your so-called community engagement is more than just a PR stunt? How can you claim to understand our struggles while living in comfort?" The audience shifted, whispers floating among them. His taunt pricked at her resolve. Had she merely traded one form of privilege? Sensing the tide of silence, she steadied herself, reflecting on the weeks of genuine connection she had built. "Mark, that's an understandable concern given my background," she began, drawing on every ounce of conviction she had. "But it's precisely because I've experienced another world that I want to use my resources to create opportunities. I might not have lived your struggles, but I'm here to work towards solutions, not just token gestures." As the debate continued, each exchange chipped away at her uncertainties, revealing beneath the polished surface a grit she hadn't realized she possessed. The anger and hurt voiced by those affected by systemic issues became a rallying cry within her, pushing her deeper into vulnerability. A well-placed question from Mark about her dedication to mentorship redirected her focus. "What are you willing to sacrifice for the change you claim to want?" An honest answer bubbled to her lips, stripped of embellishments. "Everything. My time, my comfort, and yes, my reputation. I'm at the precipice of redefining what it means to truly engage in this community, and I'm ready for the hard work that comes with it." In that moment, she felt an exhilarating clarity. Defending her progress wasn't just about articulating her intentions. It was about claiming her place alongside those she aimed to empower. Each reply fueled her conviction. The hesitant bravado transformed into authentic passion. As the debate wound down and the audience prepared to vote, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment, both in her delivery and the authenticity she had shown. Yet as the tension hung palpably in the air, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. A clear direction had emerged, but the complexities of her journey still loomed ahead. Could she navigate the intersection of her past privilege and her commitment for the long-term benefit of others? As she left the stage, her heart raced, not from the adrenaline of having spoken her truth, but from the dawning realization that her journey wasn't merely about change. It was also about challenging herself to continue evolving within a community that needed more than just sympathy. With Mark's words echoing in her mind, she recognized that one debate had shifted her perspective, but the true friction of progress was still to come. What awaited her next, and what new revelations lay in the path of enlightening others, promised to push the boundaries of her resolve. The aftermath of the debate left Sarah buzzing with clarity, yet shadows loomed on the periphery of her mind. While she had stepped off that stage buoyed by applause, the nagging questions from Mark still flickered in her thoughts. Could she sustain this new trajectory? Had she merely scratched the surface of something deeper, something rife with complexities she was yet to confront? Early that week, she revisited her office, this time not as a sanctuary of hope, but as a battleground where the weight of expectation clashed with her earnest intentions. She pored over notes from the debate, searching for places where she could hone her message further. The thrill of engaging with the community ignited a fire within her, yet hesitation lurked, a familiar foe creeping back in. What if she faltered? What if her efforts were seen as mere superficial gestures by the same audience she aspired to inspire? As she bent over her desk, revisiting her strategy for impact, a new mission began to take shape in her mind. The debate had uncovered a desire in her to connect, not just as a leader, but as a peer. Perhaps mentorship was the gateway, not only to impart her knowledge, but also to absorb the truths of those she wished to empower. She hastily drafted a plan to gather a small group, emerging voices from the community, hoping to facilitate a genuine exchange of ideas and experiences. On the second day of preparations, alight with her new vision, Sarah felt renewed purpose flutter within her. She reached out to potential participants, crafting emails with care, her fingers hovering over the keyboard as she put forth her invitation. Each message was more than an invitation, it was a promise to stand alongside rather than above. But as she awaited responses, anxiety coiled tightly around her heart. No longer safely ensconced in a world of privilege, she faced an unsettling truth. Mentorship required vulnerability, a willingness to show herself fully through both triumph and failure. What if those she reached out to were as skeptical as Mark? What if she appeared more foolish than wise? In the days that followed, responses trickled in. Each acknowledgement shifted her perspective. Some expressed eagerness, while others hesitated. One particular reply caught her breath, an aspiring artist who had grappled with exclusion, hoping to find footing in a world that often felt predetermined. Their exchange, fraught with unspoken understanding, reminded Sarah of her early days of seeking validation. In that static silence of her office, she felt the stirrings of empathy wrap around her, forging a connection that felt raw and honest. Soon the meeting day approached, and as Sarah prepped for discussions, an unsettling tension filled her stomach. The idea of sharing, of being exposed to the very vulnerabilities she wished to champion, sent shockwaves through her confidence. Could she truly uphold the mantle of a mentor, or was she destined to repeat the same missteps she sought to move beyond? When the day arrived, the atmosphere was electric. Those that had agreed to join gathered in her office, bringing with them a mix of excitement and skepticism. Facing them felt like stepping onto that debate stage all over again, a moral balancing act between showing her authentic self and assuming a role that felt too grand for her familiar skin. As they began to introduce themselves, Sarah felt a potent mix of courage and fear whirled within her, amplifying each story shared. They reflected shards of her own journey, each personal struggle echoing the fears she had long buried. It dawned on her that this was precisely what she craved: real connections rooted in honesty, challenges, and empathy. Yet just as the discussions began to deepen, someone shifted uncomfortably, shooting her a look that mirrored Mark's skepticism. "Are you just doing this for yourself?" they asked, voice steady yet probing. "How do we know this is real?" Just like that, Sarah was thrust into the crucible of her mission, an opportunity masked in resistance, a test of her resolve that threatened to unravel it all. The stakes had suddenly become higher. Could she navigate this critical moment and turn doubt into trust? Or would her past failures transform her earnest challenge into just another fleeting endeavor? As silence enveloped the room, Sarah was left grappling with the reality of her intentions, recognizing that this was not merely about her journey. It was about choosing to be transparent at a moment when honesty could either pave the way for growth or seal her fate in cynicism. As the weight of the room settled on her shoulders, Sarah took a moment to collect herself. A fog of self-doubt threatened to choke her nascent vision, but deep down she sensed the importance of what lay ahead. She remembered her own struggles, the way she yearned for support when everything felt insurmountable. This was no longer just about her. It was about creating spaces where vulnerability transformed into strength. Meeting the gaze of her audience, Sarah realized she had a decision to make. She could deflect the question, craft a polished response to preserve her image, or she could lean into the discomfort and allow her raw truth to emerge. The silence stretched. Finally, she chose honesty. "This isn't about me," she began, her voice wavering at first but gaining strength with each word. "Sure, I have my own reasons, my own goals. But more than that, I want to learn from all of you. I want to understand your challenges and share in that journey together." The air in the room shifted. Some participants exchanged glances, while others leaned forward, intrigued. The question lingered, unyielding, but Sarah felt a flicker of momentum grow. It was as if her words cracked a barrier. They weren't just gathered to listen to her. They were navigating their own paths under the same umbrella of uncertainty and aspiration. "Why should we trust you?" came another voice, younger and emboldened, a challenge cloaked in skepticism. The tone was harsh, yet Sarah recognized the authenticity embedded within the inquiry. It resonated with her past, when doubt had shaped her own expectations. "I understand that trust doesn't come easily," she replied, deliberately choosing her next words. "I've had my share of failures and disappointments too. I've doubted myself, wondering if I could be a good mentor or a leader. But in reaching out to you, I acknowledge that this is a shared process. I'm here to learn, to adapt, and to grow, just like all of you." As Sarah spoke, she felt an unexpected surge of purpose swell within. Each word forged a connection. Each pause gave space for shared breath, for unspoken recognition that they were in this intricate dance of support and doubt together. The skepticism began to soften the intense environment, creating an opening for dialogue. Participants began to share their experiences, frustrations, and aspirations. Sarah listened intently, her thoughts darting toward how she might serve this group not only as a mentor but also as an equal. The discussion sparked a realization that mentorship was not a hierarchy but a tapestry woven from shared strengths and challenges. In moments of revelation, Sarah caught glimpses of hidden talents within the group. One participant had a unique ability to create art that spoke volumes about isolation, while another had an undeniable sense of humor that could diffuse tension with ease. Ideas spiraled, intermingling with laughter and deeper conversations about dreams and fears that lay beneath. Yet, as the meeting progressed, nagging resentments bubbled beneath the surface. Not everyone was convinced of Sarah's sincerity. There was talk of obligations, expectations. Was she genuinely committed, or was this just another item on her to-do list? Another chance for personal validation? These doubts lingered like shadows, a constant reminder of her precarious position. Feeling their hesitance mirrored in her own heart, Sarah decided to address it head-on. "I can't prove my commitment with just words. I want to show you," she extended boldly, inviting them to propose a collaborative project or initiative. "Together, let's create something meaningful and authentic." The idea hung in the air, charged with possibility. Would they embrace this challenge and allow her to partner with them? Could they cultivate a project that emerging voices used as a platform for their stories and connection? As they mulled it over, uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud. The meeting teetered on the precipice of transformation, suggesting that Sarah's journey, still so nascent, could pivot profoundly toward the genuine relationships and impactful work she sought. Out of the delicate balance between hope and doubt, a singular realization struck her. This was not just a test of her intentions, it was an invitation to define her role anew in a world that warranted authenticity. As eyes turned toward her, searching for direction, Sarah felt the exhilarating terror of a pending breakthrough. The possibility of not only crafting a mentorship, but a new chapter beyond her deepest fears. Yet, just as some hands began to rise with tentative ideas, the office door swung open, disrupting the moment. A familiar figure stepped inside, eyes sharp. Mark stood at the threshold with his typical stoic demeanor as he surveyed the scene. What chaos had she unwittingly invited back into her growing sanctuary? The room collectively held its breath. Sarah's heart raced. The tension wrapped tightly around her like a vice. How would Mark's presence shift the balance, upend the newfound possibilities she had so fervently tried to create? Determination flashed within her. She would not let this be the end. The real test was just beginning. The weight of Mark's presence filled the room, embedding uncertainty into the atmosphere that had begun to mend. Sarah's mind raced, grasping at the threads of courage woven through her preceding words. Their breakthrough felt fragile now, teetering as his gaze flitted over her and her audience like a hawk assessing a vulnerable nest. "What's happening here?" Mark's voice sliced through the tension, blending skepticism with authority. Sarah sensed the old dynamics shifting. She could almost taste the simmering judgment mixed with lingering camaraderie. "We're discussing ideas for a collaborative project," she responded, striving to maintain her composure despite the anxiety brewing beneath her surface. She felt the need to assert her newfound authority, but as she spoke, she sensed the collective weight of eyes, some filled with respect, others laced with doubt, particularly those from her past. "Collaborative projects are all well and good, but how does that align with our objectives?" Mark challenged, crossing his arms with an air of practiced indifference. His posture transported Sarah, igniting memories of frustrated exchanges where she had often found herself on the defense, trying to justify her worth to voices that seemed to dictate the course of her path. Despite the pressure rising, Sarah reminded herself of what she had just professed to the group. Trust, authenticity, and vulnerability were still vital pillars. This is about navigating our goals together, building a foundation instead of working in isolation. I can't push an agenda alone. I need your insights too. There was a steadiness in her voice that surprised even her. Mark deflected her intention. "But do you really think that'll resonate with everyone? You may be losing sight of the broader strategy here." The challenge hung in the air, and Sarah understood his concern came from experience. Yet a flicker of resistance ignited in her. With her heart pounding, she decided this was a moment demanding action. "How about we address that?" She took a step towards him, inviting the tension to take on a different form. "What strategies do you see that we're overlooking? Let's talk about them." Sarah noticed small nods among the participants. It was an unexpected but precious signal that perhaps they too were caught in the push-pull of discomfort and anticipation. Mark's brow furrowed, but the hard edges of his skepticism softened ever so slightly. He was caught off guard by this twist, the invitation for dialogue. It quickly became clear to Sarah that she was not merely trying to prove her worth to him or anyone else in the room. She was testing herself, reshaping her role amidst the doubts swirling around them. "If you want to engage this group, you'll need bold ideas," Mark resumed. The challenge resonated. It felt different now. Perhaps it served as acknowledgement rather than an indictment against her abilities. With each word, his energy shifted subtly, and Sarah seized that opportunity. "I want to bring those ideas to life. We can integrate our individual talents, find solutions together. Let's create a framework that showcases what we can all offer, a platform that captures our diversity and creativity." Her voice was rising with the excitement of purpose, feeding off their tentative nods and whispers building momentum. "Let's draw up a list of what we each can contribute," she proposed, turning her eyes back to the group, "from art to humor and everything in between. We'll also identify any hesitations. Fear can't hold us back. I want every voice here to count." There was a charged silence as the participants considered the shift. Slowly, hands began to rise again, this time with a newfound sense of ownership. Ideas sprang forth, each idea laced with the vibrancy of shared experience. Sarah's heart thrummed with exhilaration, knowing she had pivoted, a moment that could have spiraled into criticism, into a blossoming collaborative spirit. Yet, as voices filled the space with vibrant ideas, a flicker of uncertainty pricked at Sarah's mind. Was the groundwork set firmly enough? Mark's skepticism wouldn't dissolve overnight, and there remained whispers of doubt. Could she forge a meaningful connection in the face of lingering opposition? Suddenly, the vibrant energy shifted when Mark interjected again, though this time his voice carried a different weight. "What if it doesn't work? What if you find that all these voices complicate the vision rather than clarify it?" Sarah felt a shudder ripple through her as that question hung heavy, a stark reminder that her journey was far from complete. The truth was, she didn't have all the answers. The stakes were higher than she had anticipated. Mark might have unintentionally shifted the focus, but the challenge was clear. She wasn't merely tasked with leading, she was tasked with the responsibility to bridge gaps, to cultivate potential, and defend against any unraveling. As she contemplated, a personal reckoning washed over her. Alongside triumphs, there were complexities she had to embrace. This dynamic was evolving, and with it emerged both opportunity and vulnerability. Sarah's resolve fortified. Leaning into the challenge, she decided firmly that embracing that uncertainty would become part of her narrative, a testament to growth she so desperately sought. The meeting continued, yet Sarah could feel the approaching storm. The dynamic was shifting yet again. She wasn't sure whether it would coax a new potential or deepen the divide, but one thing remained clear: she was willing to navigate it, no matter the cost. As the discussions unfolded, she could hear Mark's quiet contemplation, steadily revising his expectations about her ambitions. The tension lay in wait like a tightly coiled spring. But could she truly evolve her leadership despite the specter of doubt? The answer was just beginning to unfold, hinting at a deeper confrontation lying just ahead. As ideas flowed around her, Sarah felt the undercurrents of anxiety mingle with exhilaration. Each voice brought a pulse of inspiration, but within her a tempest brewed. Mark's skepticism flickered through her mind like a neon sign, its light questioning her every choice. Could she really lead a group with such divergent thoughts and unyielding powers of doubt running intermixed with the enthusiasm? Despite her growing confidence, a moment of introspection was brewing just beneath the surface. As the participants continued to brainstorm, Sarah pondered her role. Had she genuinely crafted an environment that allowed vulnerability? Or was she simply replacing one form of criticism with another, the pressure of expectations wrapped in the guise of collaboration? Each new idea shared tugged at her desire for clarity. "All right," she interjected, raising her hands to slow the rapid whirlwind of suggestions. "Let's try to refine this. What is it we hope to achieve together?" The room hesitated, faces uncertain, and Sarah could feel her stomach knot as silence engulfed them. Would her attempts to steer the discussion more strategically undermine the collaborative spirit they had just ignited? Sweat beaded at the back of her neck, the weight of potential disappointment pressed against her chest. Then, almost instinctively, Sarah recalled her earlier vow to navigate the complexity of this project. She exhaled slowly, her heart picking up its rhythm as she anchored herself in the moment. "I'd love to hear your thoughts on our end goal. What impact do we want to create?" A murmur slid through the group, rippling like a stone tossed into calm waters, stirring discontent yet sparking curiosity. After a few moments, Jessica, a team member she had initially worried was skeptical, leaned forward. "I'd like us to create something that resonates personally with our audience, something meaningful." Sarah nodded, her resolve strengthening the longer they continued. She echoed Jessica's sentiment. "Exactly. Let's not just create for the sake of creative output. Let's ensure our contributions reflect who we are." The gravity of Jessica's comment seemed to reverberate around the room, igniting faces with fresh energy. As voices began weaving together feedback, addressing both aspirations and fears, a new opportunity unfurled before Sarah. She was not just a channel directing the discussion, she had become the heartbeat of the group, integrating their passion into a coherent vision. Yet Mark's earlier doubts floated back to the forefront of her mind, like a spectral reminder. What if this collective experience unraveled? What if she fostered chaos rather than clarity? Each moment they spent negotiating ideas without defined direction felt perilous. "Let's take a moment. What if we outline our process? If we can set guidelines, it may make room for deeper contributions and clearer outcomes," she suggested. Sarah's voice steadied, pirouetting from uncertainty to leadership, showing promising resolve. The approach felt like a pillar, aiming to stabilize their momentum. Slowly, nods of approval filtered across the group. A soft consensus emerged. They proceeded to spell out a framework that would make space for contributions while maintaining focus on their joint purpose. Delighted by their cooperative spirit, Sarah's enthusiasm soared. However, a pang of dread still lurked at the edges of her success. Preserving this momentum required vigilance. There was no guarantee how a fracture could appear. As Sarah observed the dynamic shift, she realized her personal growth extended beyond navigating fears and uncertainties. It revolved around her ability to harness collective energy while containing the chaos of diverging opinions. Each moment required not just her voice, but the strength to advocate not only for her vision, but for the group's integrity. "Let's wrap this up for today, but," she paused, scanning each face. "Let's reconvene after everyone has had a chance to reflect on what we've shared." The murmur of agreement surged in the room, yet shadows of doubt still whispered. Would they truly feel empowered to contribute meaningfully? Mark remained silent, watching Sarah with a mixture of admiration and skepticism. She sensed the subtle challenge still issuing from him. Could she sustain this momentum, or would it inevitably falter? As deliberations concluded, the group dismantled into small clusters of animated discussion. Sarah hung back, her heart racing with clarity mingled with trepidation. This moment felt pivotal, but the road ahead was fraught with potential pitfalls. "What if our best ideas come while we're apart?" she pondered, turning the thought over in her mind like a pebble in her palm. Could she harness the power of their individual thoughts over time to foster greater clarity? Walking out, Sarah dared to believe that their first steps together had ignited something transformative. But lurking behind the veil of hope was the unshakable doubt. Was she really equipped to maintain this fragile connection? And just as she turned down the hallway, a voice called after her, a lingering remark that sent a shiver down her spine. "You know, Sarah, just because things are going well now doesn't mean they will stay that way." The hairs on her arms rose at the unsteady prediction. It posited an approaching storm, a confrontation of expectations, leaving her to question whether she could withstand the chaos ahead. Was the foundation they'd built truly strong enough, or was it merely a facade awaiting collapse? What forces lay just beyond their current momentum, waiting to challenge her resolve? As the sounds of laughter and casual conversation faded behind her, Sarah felt the distance grow heavier. The weight of Mark's warning hung around her neck like an anchor, dragging her thoughts into a sea of uncertainty. She turned the corners of her mind over and over, grappling with the pressure of sustaining the fragile harmony that had begun to weave itself within the group. Walking toward her office, the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed in her ears, a constant reminder of the reality she was stepping into. She closed the door behind her, feeling the familiar enclosure morph from a sanctuary into a cage. The silence pressed against her so deeply that it became a living thing, demanding answers to questions she was not ready to face. What if everything she had attempted was just a fleeting facade? What if the dynamic they had created was merely a performance waiting for its curtain call? Standing by her desk, she flexed her fingers, glancing at the scattered notes and sketches that chronicled their discussions. Each color-coded sticky note represented a flicker of inspiration, yet their tangled nature seemed like a chaotic tapestry that threatened to unravel. She bit her lip, reflecting on the raw energy they had generated. Yet panic began to creep in, a fear of inadequacy creeping up on her like a shadow. Could she orchestrate a harmony able to withstand dissonance? A thought suddenly pierced through the haze. The realization that she didn't simply steer the group, she needed to galvanize it, elevate it, and drive it forward. Reflecting back on Jessica's comment about creating something meaningful, Sarah felt a surge of determination urging her to evolve. She picked up a marker and began to write on a large piece of, "What does meaning look like for us?" This would be her guiding question. The resolve imbued her with a new sense of urgency. The potential for stagnation was palpable, and she couldn't let it define their journey. She scribbled down other thoughts, contagious ideas for future meetings, organizing them into themes: vulnerability, empowerment, innovation. Each word anchored her anxiety, replacing doubt with the thrill of proactive engagement. With newfound clarity, she stood up and paced, immersed in a narrative of progress. What if she turned this into an experiment, not just with the group, but with herself? She could share her own vulnerabilities, her doubts and fears about leadership, while inviting them into this unfolding narrative. The fear of emotional exposure was now paralleled with a sense of authenticity. Yet, a whisper of hesitation remained. Would revealing her uncertainties unravel the very foundation she was striving to solidify? Would sharing her inner conflicts weaken her position or strengthen their collective bond? As she weighed her options, the inner conflict escalated into a tempest of introspection. Sarah knew she had to confront her own doubts if she wanted to encourage others to do the same. As a leader, she was not meant to be infallible. She was meant to be human. Stepping back, she took a breath, igniting a flicker of hope within her chest. She would invite the group to explore their fears, to dismantle their pressures openly. A radical vulnerability could be the very catalyst they needed. The hour ticked away as she meticulously crafted an agenda for their next meeting, beckoning for a deeper, shared exploration. Sarah glanced at the clock. Time was fleeting, and she needed to act. Resolutely, she returned to her desk and sent out the invites. "Let's talk about our fears and how they drive us," she typed, her heart racing at the prospect of genuine connection that could arise. But as soon as she hit send, a chill ran through her. What would she do if sharing her own vulnerabilities would only amplify doubts? Standing back from the monitor, she heard the soft creak of the floorboards, as if the room itself was testing the weight of her resolve. She had dared to confront the complex interdependencies of trust, leadership, and vulnerability, yet doubt still loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. Determined, Sarah felt a flicker of defiance against the rising tide of uncertainty. She couldn't help but wonder, though, what if she had opened a door to chaos? Was she capable of orchestrating this emotional symphony, or would the cacophony drown her out? As a flurry of thoughts swirled in her mind, the tension thickened the air around her. She was on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unpredictable depths of her own leadership journey. But whether she would soar or crash remained a haunting question. And then her phone buzzed, a single notification catching her eye. It was a message from Mark. "Hope you're ready. This can't last forever." The challenge was set. The storm was brewing. Determined to face the storm head-on, Sarah stood at the precipice of her transformation, ready to bridge the gap between her insecurities and the bold leader she aspired to be. She had gained insight into her own vulnerabilities and discovered the strength in sharing them. But the test to manifest true change beckoned like a siren song. Weeks had passed since the uproar of the debate, and the listening sessions with the community were transformative. The words expressed by the participants began to weave a rich tapestry of shared experiences, challenges, dreams, and unvarnished ambitions. Each time she gathered them, it felt as though they constructed a wellspring of hope and resolution, breathing life into the mission of bridging opportunities. Yet Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as she entered the community center for their most significant session yet. She had invited each participant to come forward with a project idea that resonated with them personally. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. The culmination of her efforts hinged on creating a space rooted in trust and respect. She had the blueprint. Now it was time to let them build. As they trickled into the room, her nerves danced with her excitement. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her tone buoyant but steady. "Today, we come together to channel our collective creativity and courage. This is our moment to lay the groundwork for change." The energy in the room buzzed with anticipation. Sarah felt the tide urging her forward. One by one, participants stepped into the spotlight, sharing their project ideas. Maria focused on an art initiative that fostered self-identity through expression. Jessica proposed a mentoring program pairing youth with local professionals. And new voices emerged from the background, unveiling thoughts that had waited patiently to be heard. Each idea was deeper than any charity gala could reach. This was about empowerment that transcended monetary donations. It was a symbiotic relationship forming before her eyes. Sarah leaned in closer as they shared. With every articulate voice, her own confidence grew stronger. She recognized they were not merely fulfilling a duty to reciprocate her efforts. They were harnessing their collective power, willing to challenge both status quo and her insecurities. "How can we support one another in reaching our goals?" she posed once more, urging their collaboration. Gradually, the conversations morphed into animated dialogues, layers of hesitation peeling away like paint from an old canvas. As discussions flourished, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the palpable shift. There was a trust blossoming, a community recognizing the potency of shared insights, intertwining their paths towards greater purpose. Then, amidst this flourishing atmosphere, Mark entered, disrupting the harmony with a sharp gaze that consumed the room. He folded his arms, eyes flickering between skepticism and intrigue. "Are you really prepared for this?" he asked, his tone dripping with challenge. The shift in room temperature was immediate. Doubt seeped in like a fog, inching toward her carefully constructed sanctuary. Sarah inhaled. "Yes, we are prepared, Mark. We're creating something here that's genuine, with raw ideas and commitment, and we're invested in each other's growth." For a moment, Mark faltered, and the air sat heavy with tension. Then he responded with quiet admiration. "Then show me." Inspired by his challenge, Sarah gestured to the group. "Let's share our commitments. If we lay bare our intentions, we solidify our direction." It was a moment of boldness, and herself she thought, "This is me being vulnerable. This is our evolution." One participant after another stepped up, promising to contribute their time or skills, shares of accountability that wove trust into the framework they were building. As Maria committed, her voice trembled yet resonated. "I want to create safe spaces for others through art, and I'm all in." With cascading declarations, the array of intentions cemented the resolve in the room. Mark's expression softened as he watched, recognition dawning upon him. True leadership is anchoring others' voices, he conceded, acknowledging a truth burgeoning in front of them. His skepticism began to wane, replaced by cautious respect. And with those words, Sarah felt the weight of doubt lift slightly, ensuring her independence from eradicated fears. This project, this movement, isn't solely about one person, she echoed, her voice laced with the strength of purpose ignited by her embrace of vulnerability. The collective laughter, dreams, and aspirations intertwined, a harmony intoxicatingly satisfying. Sarah felt strong. She stepped back momentarily to absorb the exhilarating atmosphere around her, recognizing how far she had come. The hustle and bustle of people brainstorming, with earnest ambitions articulated, was a vivid departure from the isolated silence she had known. And as the final commitments were affirmed, a new direction took form. Paths broadened, futures illuminated, and Sarah's role transformed from one of self-proclaimed leadership to genuine stewardship. As the session concluded, applause erupted, not just for Sarah, but for every voice present. She realized that she had conquered a significant duality, overcoming external scrutiny while grappling with her internal self-doubt. The applause was not directed solely at her accomplishments, but at the collective commitment they'd fostered. In the weeks that followed, the challenges still loomed, but the foundation they established had strengthened her resolve. Slowly, Mark transitioned from the role of adversary to collaborator, amplifying the group's collective purpose. They worked together, their projects intertwined with support and innovation. Ultimately, Sarah gathered the community for a culminating celebration. The event transformed into not just a display of progress, but a festival of possibilities, a testament to the resilience shaped from confronting their vulnerabilities. And in that moment, she stood fully in her power. She had transcended her initial isolation, emerging as an empowering leader among equals, proving to herself that the essence of true wealth lies not in what one possesses, but in the lives enriched and the hope ignited. Sarah Jenkins now understood the profound change that rippled within, to become both a catalyst for growth and to fuel her own journey of transformation. Reclaiming authenticity in a world wild with uncertainty. The future was no longer tethered to shadows of doubt. It sprawled before her, illuminated by trust and community, a pact sealed stronger than any monetary measure could ever dictate. As she basked in the warmth of her accomplishments, she turned toward the horizon of new ventures. To cultivate an environment of solidarity characterized growth, she embraced it with steady confidence. Action had spoken, purpose crystallized, a revolutionary cycle had blossomed. Now you must embrace this transformative journey alongside Sarah. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support. This is the moment to acknowledge powerful stories of individual transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share.